Washington Journal continues.
We welcome back to our desk author and syndicated columnist Ann Coulter. She's out with a new book this week, Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. We'll get to the book, but first I want to make use of your legal background and get your thoughts
I was
on
wondering if that might
yesterday's
come
news.
up. I just woke up, and I haven't practiced law in a while, but I write a little about both cases in Resistance is Futile. The Manafort case has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with Trump. It is an example of the one Soviet import we have in this country, which is the Office of the Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Rosenstein's commission to him, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, Rod Rosenstein, should have just said, we think this guy is a sleaze. There must be something there. And now we have Manafort and 17 very talented prosecutors who are also liberal Democrats just searching for crimes of anyone around Donald Trump. Well, you know, if you do that to anyone, how would, you know, your viewers like somebody looking through? I cite the book Harry Silverglade, and my book has a book, you've probably done it on Book TV, called 3 Felonies a Day. And his argument is that there are so many federal felonies, not to mention all of the state felonies, that the average law-abiding person could be innocently committing 3 felonies a day. In fact, I assume it's associated with the book, it's Crime a Day on Twitter. And I quote a few of the ones that just happened to be scrolling by when I was writing my book. And, you know, one is, you know, it's a federal felony not to label a tampon on its level of absorbency unless it's sold from a vending machine. We don't even know how many federal crimes there are because there are so many. There was once an attempt to count them by the Department of Justice, gave up in frustration. So, you know, anyone who was fixated on, especially in something complicated like tax law, and I find it hilarious that one of them is lying to the bank. I'm sorry, that was a huge issue. That is what brought down the economy. That is what the Democrats were pushing, these liar loans. You can go in, you can cite unemployment benefits because, oh, we need everybody to buy a house. It's so important to buy a house. That was official government policy opposed by not all Republicans, but the only people who did oppose it were Republicans, and they were yelled at by Barney Frank and Maxine Waters. And that is people lying on loans to buy houses. Doesn't everyone know about that now, and he's getting nailed for it? I mean, it's comical. As for the tax case, and I am definitely not a tax lawyer, but I do know that there are ways to evade taxes. And by the way, it was pioneered by George Soros. If you make money abroad, to keep them in accounts abroad, and when and how you have to report them and how much. And George Soros has been moving money back and forth from the Cayman Islands to Ireland. Well, he's worth $20 billion. So, how about looking at him and not someone just because for 2 months he was Trump's campaign manager?
So should the Trump administration be more concerned about the Cohen guilty plea, the campaign finance violations that he pled guilty to, and implicating President Trump, as is the banner headline across the New York Times today?
It's kind of hard to say because Manafort, no, has absolutely 100% nothing to do with Trump, even less to do with Russian collusion. Cohen, I think it exposes the special counsel. Look, Cohen doesn't look like necessarily the sort of person I would choose to be my legal representative or anything else. He does seem a little bit shady, let me just put it that way. So I think most people aren't floored that there were some tax irregularities. The fact that they threw in a campaign finance violation for paying Stormy Daniels, I mean, that just shows the whole point of this is to get Trump. That is, and I describe campaign finance violations in the book. I will say very quickly on that one, the single most important point, you know, people in Washington know, I think most normal people have no idea anything about campaign finance violations, although they're being discussed now as if it's, you know, a crime against pedophilia. They're very complicated. The most important thing to know is this money that would have been spent but for the campaign? It's going to be very hard to prove that a man whose namesake is all of his businesses, his golf courses, his hotels, that, oh yeah, Yeah, other than the fact that I was running for office, I don't care if everyone thinks I'm sleeping around with these floozies.
On the Manafort conviction, Karen Tumulty in today's Washington Post writes that conviction will increase the pressure on others in Trump's orbit to cooperate with Mueller, and it may encourage Mueller to move sooner rather than later to bring in the president himself to testify, possibly by issuing subpoenas. Do you think that's the case?
No, I think we've been hearing the same thing for 2 years, something I make fun of in my book, that we keep hearing. The noose is tightening. You see, you start with the little fish, you move to the big fish, and then nothing ever really happens. And again, nothing has really happened. I mean, it's not good for Manafort. It's not good for Cohen. And I think it does further expose the special counsel as being just convening a star chamber to look at one man and everyone around him. I don't think a lot of people, I mean, so far Trump and a lot of people around him have survived that, but that isn't the way the law is supposed to work in America.
What would be your advice to the president today?
Cohen, nothing. He has nothing to worry about. I think that's a very silly case. And, you know, at worst, let's say he's guilty. He'll have to pay a fine. But, you know, it's Cohen's word, who's now fighting for his life, and he's going to say, no, the president told me that he was only doing this because he was running for president. But I would refer you to, you know, the John Edwards case, where he had very wealthy donors, Bunny Mellon, paying millions of dollars to put up his mistress when he was running for president, his pregnant mistress. He went to court. Everyone ridiculed the prosecution, acquitted immediately. Are those donors still paying for his mistress? I don't think so. I think that very clearly had to do with the campaign, though I think it's going to be very hard to prove that Trump would not have cared. And by the way, I don't even necessarily think that that what these women are alleging, is it just Stormy Daniels or is it both of them?
Karen McDougal is the other name that's been brought up as well.
Was it for paying both of them or only Stormy Daniels?
I believe it was money for Karen McDougal's story.
Okay. I don't believe either of them. I could be wrong, but the reason I don't, and it doesn't matter, I think one of the things I'm not wild about the president for, it's all a style matter. The only political thing I'm angry with him for is not building the wall. But I'm from Connecticut, and we don't consider it tasteful to go around bragging about your wealth. But if you are going to go around bragging about your wealth and hanging around with, you know, reality TV stars and Playboy bunnies, you're probably going to get a lot of suits, a lot of nuisance suits. And for one thing, I don't think the Karen McDougal one, she says she had an affair with him for 1 year and she doesn't have a scrap of evidence. I could date a boy for a week and give you 5 pieces of evidence. She has nothing. He didn't leave cufflinks behind. There's no answering machine message. And the other one claims a one-time roll in the sack, and I think overlaying all of this, it's worth remembering that Donald Trump is a germaphobe. So I don't believe it. Maybe it'll be true, but I don't believe it.
What's your feeling on issuing pardons for either Manafort or Cohen?
Not Cohen. Cohen has made a big mistake, I think. He reminds me of, if you remember, the hero of the Paula Jones case, or of the Clinton issue, was Paula Jones. And as soon as it was over, she allowed the Clinton flacks, including Lanny Davis, but Joe Conason, to latch on to her, get her to do a Playboy spread. We're going to bring her down. We're going to take her down. And that's exactly what Lanny Davis is doing with Cohen. So great, now both sides hate you.
Ann Coulter with us until our program ends at 10 o'clock this morning. As usual, phone lines for Republicans, 202-748-8001. Democrats, 202-748-8000. Independents, 202-748-8002. Out with the new book as of yesterday, Resistance is Futile, as the headline, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. I want to jump to the conclusion of your book.
Oh, that's a good one.
The title of the conclusion page, For Democracy to Live, We Must Kill the Media. Strong language. Explain.
Yes. Well, the previous 200 whatever pages will more clearly illustrate why. Luckily, I don't have a job, so I can spend months just reading through Lexis transcripts of every discussion of Trump on CNN, MSNBC, every article about him in the New York Times. And I mean, it's pretty stunning, just the contradictions. not only from, year to year, month to month, but day to day. The position of the resistance, which has encompassed completely the media, is simply, where is Trump on this? Oh, that's awful. I mean, to the extent of not caring about criminal defendants' rights, really jumping in with both feet on bullying people. Facts and logic. How about Russian collusion? Do we really care about Russian collusion? Because I have a little tip for you. Hillary Clinton's campaign and the DNC, and oh yeah, the FBI paid Russians for information on the opponent, Donald Trump. We got our Russian collusion all right. But when are the media, I mean, most of it has always been liberal. And I am the New York Times' most devoted and loyal reader. But it used to be you could read a New York Times article and, yeah, okay, I wouldn't have made this paragraph one. In fact, I probably wouldn't have made those first 6 paragraphs, the first paragraphs. But eventually I'll get some facts. It's getting to the point that you can't even turn to, the gold standard of journalism and expect to get facts from it. So I think we need to destroy the media and rebuild it along more ethical lines. That's the one thing it looks like we might get out of Trump, since it doesn't look like we're getting a wall.
If you destroy the media, what does that mean for you? Aren't you somebody who made a career through the current media environment?
Well, we'd still have a media. It just would be an ethical media. They would tell the truth. They would not be fake news. They would not be sending away citizens in a democracy who need facts to know what's going on with a false story.
One paragraph from your book, from that conclusion page, you write, Trump may be shallow, narcissistic, disloyal, and the crudest kind of braggart, but he's like chemotherapy for the country. It's unpleasant to go through. You vomit, your hair falls out, but it kills cancer cells, and you live. Trump's presidency may be an unpleasant thing to go through, but everyone on the New York Times editorial board will die. Has the New York Times reached out to you at all about that specific paragraph? Would you care if they did?
No, I invited a bunch of them to the book party down here. Many of them are my friends. Look, there are 1 or 2 good reporters at the New York Times, but there are enough who are not. And certainly the editorial board, most recent edition, a woman who has dedicated all of her free time to, cheering for the genocide of white men. Yeah, that's going a long way to making the media look objective and fair. New York Times, good job.
We're talking with Ann Coulter. The book Resistance is Futile: How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. She's with us until 10, taking your calls. Greg's up first in Alabama, Republican from Huntsville. Greg, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I just want to say, first thing that I saw as Trump was elected, I just happened to be watching coverage on several different networks, and I had a feeling we were going to get to this point when I saw Don Lemon and his words say, as Trump was elected, there's just no way to polish this turd. I have never seen that kind of disrespect. Anybody on any respectable network would have been fired. Now, after $17 million, we come up and discover that there may be a small infraction, may not be an infraction. There's no Russian collusion. We still haven't proven Russian collusion. We're tightening the screws on everybody around him, raided his personal attorney's home, and basically we come up with the fact that he may have had sex with 2 women, a billionaire man that may have had sex out of wedlock. I don't think it was worth $17 million.
Ann Coulter.
No, that's a great point. One of the good things about having written so many books about so much in politics is there are lots of flashbacks in my book. So this, on the campaign finance violation point, since that's what's in the news now, you may recall, I think many C-SPAN viewers will recall, back during the Clinton era, we had Chinese nationals literally dragging duffel bags of cash to the DNC. We had the White House holding fundraisers in the White House. Ooh, that's a big campaign finance violation, holding a fundraiser on federal property. Eventually, videotapes emerged. And as I point out in the book, Saturday Night Live was tougher on Clinton than Attorney General Janet Reno was. No independent counsel for that. The newspaper of record, the New York Times, chastises Janet Reno for her, quote, blunders. Come on, give me a break.
Nadia, McLean, Virginia, independent. Good morning.
Yes, I find it breathtaking, Anne, that you're twisting yourself into a pretzel and denigrating your own integrity by pursuing this whataboutism. Let's focus on being an American first, Anne, rather than a conservative. Let's stop talking about Democrats and Republicans and liberals. So basically you're saying that all of these honorable people who have come out, Republican and Democrats, who have come out and said what this president has done to the office of the presidency is heinous, and you are basically saying our entire justice system is incompetent. You are basically saying someone who commits bank fraud, and I'm a banker, Anne, you're basically saying someone who commits bank fraud and tax evasion and is complicit with the president to commit fraud, you're basically just laughing it all away. I find you to be heinous.
Got your point, Nadia.
A lot of anger there, Nadia. You might want to see someone about that. 2 points on that. One is the idea that it's the country first and not Republican Democrat. This is precisely why people like me were so excited about the Trump presidency. I don't think it's Republicans versus Democrats, and I think the Trump candidacy exposed that. I think it's this town, Republicans and Democrats united against the people. And Trump totally exposed that. He came into office with the people behind him. Yes, I agree in theory, though clearly not with what the implication is of what Nadia was saying, that, what about America first? I think 90% of Republicans, 100% of Democrats, all they care about is who's pulling the strings, their donors. Incidentally, more current news, in the primary for, and I have one more point on Nadia, the whataboutism, we're coming back to that. That is a crucial point. But the primary for governor in Wyoming pitted, I think it's the state treasurer, against a very, very wealthy man, Foster Freeze, donor to a lot of causes that I think are fantastic, and I completely, wholeheartedly support. I was going around Washington yesterday doing some interviews, and people were chit-chatting about it. I am in Washington, and I kept saying, everyone I talked to yesterday, 100% Foster Freeze was going to win, and I kept saying, isn't he a little old? And they said, oh, but he spent so much money. That's Washington for you. They still think you win elections with money. Trump spent less money than Sanders did.
And the state treasurer, Mark Gordon, was the one who won that race.
Yeah, I wake up and see, everybody else was wrong and Ann was right. But why haven't they learned? It's not that Ann is right. Trump was right. Push popular ideas and you win. So why are they still, and by the way, you probably can't even see that I keep pointing to the Capitol building. Why do politicians still think that elections are won with money? No, they're won with popular ideas. And what's interesting about Trump is he is not a down-the-line Republican. He didn't run on tax cuts. That's why some of us are a little ticked off that he began with tax cut and the Mitch McConnell agenda.
What is your relationship with the Trump administration, the Trump White House?
Top secret. Let me get to whataboutism. This is very big these days because it is, for people paying attention, just so massively unfair. Just every precedent being dropped right and left to say, oh no, we don't want to hear about what Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton could do. That's whataboutism. That's what, for those of you who don't know what whataboutism is, it's also known as the rule of law. Like cases are treated alike. This is why Lady Justice is wearing a blindfold and holding a scale. It's not supposed to matter if your last name is Trump or Clinton. Whataboutism is a terrifying attempt to destroy the entire construct of the rule of law. Like cases are treated alike.
Do you want to chat about your relationship with the Trump administration right now?
Well, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you know I was his most vocal and immediate supporter. I think his campaign was magnificent. I think Trump has stunning political instincts. I loved, as I wrote in my last book, In Trump We Trust, seeing these Washington-style Republicans going on TV all the time and denouncing Trump, saying he's not a real Republican. You know, half the country is saying, fantastic, he's not a Republican. Thanks for reminding me. It's an all-new party of the people. And, yeah, of course, I've been quite disappointed that in many ways he has abandoned that since becoming president.
President Trump tweeting again this morning, this time talking about Paul Manafort. I feel very badly for Paul Manafort and his wonderful family. Justice, in quotations, took a 12-year-old tax case, among other things, applied tremendous pressure on him. And unlike Michael Cohen, he refused to make up stories in order to get a deal. Such respect for a brave man. That very different from what the president said about his former lawyer about 40 minutes ago. If anyone's looking for a good lawyer, I would strongly suggest that you don't retain the services of Michael Cohen.
I do think Trump, I love Trump's tweets. I think he should tweet more. The difference in Manafort and Cohen reminds me of, have you ever seen one of my favorite movies, True Romance?
I have not.
Oh, you're such an intellectual. Well, the contrast between little Elliot immediately collapsing when he's pulled over for a traffic violation and the girlfriend, Alabama, who gets beaten up for 20 minutes in a hotel room is the difference between Manafort and Cohen. Oh, yeah, I'll tell you anything. I'll tell you anything. Yes, that's Cohen.
Griffin, Georgia is next. Dottie, Democrat. Good morning.
Hi. I just wanted to give my opinion. I have read some things that she wrote. I think Ann Coulter is crazy. She wants us to believe that what we've been watching for the last 18 months
What have you read?
is not true. I've read a few things that
Like
you've
what?
written. Dear, I don't have to give you the name of it.
You don't know
okay?
the names of any of them.
It's the same way that you don't have to give us any evidence that the Clintons committed any crimes. You're not saying a thing about Trump's foundation, where they're getting ready to kick it out of New York because he was cheating. You're not saying anything about how he took the money from the foundation and bought himself a big portrait and stuck it in his building. You're not saying anything about how he's going golfing every weekend on our money and have the nerve to talk about what somebody else did. I do watch it. I have seen his rallies. All he talks about is Hillary Clinton is a crook. He has no evidence that Hillary Clinton is a crook.
I don't know why people can't just make points and must lie by beginning and saying they've read things by me, which she obviously hasn't. So just make your point next time. The fact that they're going to Trump golfs too much and the nonsense about one charity buying a portrait for another charity for a fundraising drive, if that's what you got, and that's probably about all Robert Mueller has, which is why he's going into campaign finance and old tax cases.
North Olmsted, Ohio. Basil's Republican. Good morning.
Good morning. Congratulations on your book, Ann, and God bless you. I think Donald Trump has been the catalyst this country has needed for a long, long time. What he has done is awaken the American public, and the American public is starting to speak out. They've been silenced for a long, long time. They really don't pay attention to the news media, the fake news and all that anymore. They can't be fooled anymore. Donald Trump has been the catalyst that has awakened America, with the help from people like yourself, of course. And I think that I'm very optimistic about our future because of this. The more trash they throw on Donald Trump, the more red the states are going to become. It's ironic that they cannot hurt this man with all of their nastiness, because we have awakened in America and we care about our country. Our veterans care about our country. I care about our country. I care about the youth. I'm an octogenarian. I'm going to be 88. And I'm so happy to see this man that's come to the forefront and is doing what he's doing. God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you. I do think, I mean, that's the point of my last chapter, that Trump has accomplished a lot, and it's a serious thing to get people to laugh at the media. And, I mean, some of us have been there for a while. As I say in the book, it's like a hitman who goes into the witness protection program, goes out to Iowa, he's living under a false name, and then after 30 years decides, screw it, I'm running for office under my own name. and then bam, dead. That's what I feel like the media has done to itself. I always knew what they were, but they've so lost their minds with Trump. They can't control the venom and the nonsense and the contradictions. And we have, at the same time, Trump constantly bashing them and alerting, I think, a much wider swath of Americans to the fact that you can't trust the media.
Trump constantly bashing the media and some concern from the media about the language he uses. This is from the end of last month. New York Times publisher A.G. Sulzberger, after his meeting with the president, putting out this statement. I told the president directly that I thought his language was not just divisive, but increasingly dangerous. I told him that although the phrase fake news is untrue and harmful, I'm far more concerned about his labeling journalists the enemy of the people. I warned that this inflammatory language is contributing to a rise in threats against journalists and will lead to violence.
Yeah, journalists have to worry about some potentiality of violence, whereas Trump supporters have to live with actual violence. I mean, since the Trump campaign, what we have seen is actual fascistic violence repeatedly at Trump's campaigns. Those women having the eggs thrown at them at the rally in Santa Cruz, the vicious attacks that shut down the Trump rally in Chicago at the inauguration. I don't know if you were here for that, but the riots in the streets, none of them prosecuted. A few struck plea bargains, 200 of them arrested, but the judge just throws out the most important charge. You have repeated violence at Berkeley whenever they invite a conservative to speak. We had the Night of Freedom in New York City. This was exposed by Jonathan Levine at The Wrap. He took a video of just, these happy, not all of them were Trump supporters. I wasn't there. I knew somebody who went to one of them. Liberals, gays, different kind of people. It was just a night of freedom. And they come out on the street of New York, and one guy, one who had attended, cold-cocked, his head smashes into the concrete. It looks like he was dead. He was just lying there absolutely dead in the video. Carted off to the hospital. This week you have the Social Distortion concert with a Trump supporter being beaten up by the lead singer as the crowd of hundreds of people are cheering on one guy against 600. And Pinch Sulzberger is going to talk about the potentiality of violence. Oh, give me a break. If you care about violence, you'll shut down Antifa and these violent leftists, because we are seeing many aspects of fascism rising in this country, and it is 100% against Trump supporters.
Cliff, Essex, Maryland, line for independence. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for C-SPAN, and thanks to Ms. Coulter there for being a guest. I would like to remind everyone that this entire investigation was started by a conspiracy to defraud the FISA court. And what we're seeing unfold before our eyes right now is a communist coup under color of law. Thank you.
Well, as I say, I do think the special counsel with this roving mandate to investigate, see if you can find anything there, anyone around Trump, this is Soviet justice. Have a commission. And how was it all started? It was started because James Comey was out there wildly insinuating that the president was under investigation. So as I quote in the book, when James Comey was fired, all of the news media, well, of course, echoes of Watergate. We get echoes of Watergate all the time with Republicans, and especially Trump. They're always seeing echoes of Watergate. It was all about Trump is under investigation. He fires the man investigating him. Well, it took, months later for Comey to finally admit Trump was never under investigation. So the entire basis for this special counsel, the president is under investigation. He's fired the man investigating him. No, not only was he not under investigation, but as we found out when it turned out there were spies on the Trump campaign, the FBI said, no, we weren't spying on you. We were protecting you. You weren't under investigation. So now we have it on the authority of the investigators. Not only Trump, but his campaign was never under investigation. So what is the theory for the special counsel other than this guy looks like a sleaze? Would you see if you can find something there, Mr. Mueller? If that's the standard, I'd like George Soros investigated. I'd like Terry McAuliffe investigated. I can think of a lot of people. He seems shady to me.
About 25 minutes left with Ann Coulter. Her book that came out this week, Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. Taking your calls, your comments. Phillips up next, Stillwell, Oklahoma. Democrat, good morning.
Hi, good morning. everybody in Washington's writing a book, making money off of this thing, and it's just kind of funny. But my comment is, I hope that they can go back and let people vote for the president, not the Electoral College. I think that's completely wrong. And why I say that is, if they would have went by the people's vote, we would not have this idiot, and I do say idiot, in the White House. He should have never gotten there. He should have been kicked out before he even had a chance to run for president. This is just despicable. It's sorry. And, I hate it every day. I'm not saying Hillary would have been better, but how could you get any worse than what's in there now? If you want to see rallies and, jumping in the street and happiness, wait till he gets impeached. It's coming.
It reminds me of one of my favorite actual jokes for the Trump era, the Norm Macdonald joke. The voters hated Hillary so much, they voted for someone they hated even more.
The caller says everyone is writing a book talking about your work and your book that came out this week. Before you came on, we had Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks on our program, and he talked a little bit about your work. Wanted to give you a chance to respond to some of what he said about you. Here's Cenk Uygur from earlier this morning.
That the right-wing billionaires do actually pay a lot of the people you see on TV just gobs of money to do propaganda for them, including the person who's on after me, Ann Coulter. She gets paid nonstop by right-wingers to spread their hatred and their fear, and largely for her profit and their profit when they get deregulation and tax cuts.
Oh, man, I wish. I could use that money. No one's ever paid me except the people who buy my book. And thank you, readers, for buying my book. I've been hearing this since the Clinton era. I was secretly being funded by Richard Mellon Scaife. Kept checking my mailbox, hoping for that check to come through. I don't know why it's comforting for liberals to think this. They apparently don't want me writing books. I have definitely picked that up, but sorry, that's what I do for a living. I would not say that everyone is writing books. I think most of the books, in fact, with my very first book, High Crimes and Misdemeanors, which I came on C-SPAN for, I liked that you tweeted out that photo of me in 1998. My publisher called me and said when I did the bestsellers list, no, it wasn't the first one, it was the second one, Slander, said, congratulations, you're the only, not only are you on the bestsellers list, you're the only person who wrote her own book on the bestsellers list. I've been trying to get my Bête Noire, the New York Times, for years to have, because, they have all those different lists. There's hardcover, paperback, fiction, nonfiction. I would like a list for authors who wrote their own books. I think it would be a very different list, because mostly it's just celebrity pieces of crap. Why can't they just sell mugs? Why can't they sell, doormats or bathrobes or something? Why do they have to pretend to have written books? I not only write my own books, I research my own books. I'm a great writer and a killer researcher.
In your acknowledgement section of this new book, you write, most of my friends can't be mentioned in an Ann Coulter book. Why?
That's true. Because they work in industries where they'd never work again.
Mike's up next. Akron, Ohio, independent. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for C-SPAN. Just so happens I didn't vote for Trump. I had to hold my nose, like you would believe, to vote for Hillary. But I like Trump more. In fact, I got lots of money from his casinos. I used to go there every summer play blackjack, and I didn't win all the time, but I won more than what I lost. Let's put it that way. But I just don't think he's qualified for the job. I also like LeBron James. I live about 2 miles from LeBron James. I love the guy. I would vote for that guy if he ran for mayor of Akron. Why? Because he's not qualified. So the way I look at it is, if Trump is forced from office, whether he is or not makes no difference to me. He'll be replaced by Mike Pence, not by Hillary Clinton. I just think he's like a Ross Perot. I admired Ross Perot, but he's a showman, and that's what Trump is. He's just not qualified for the job he has. I like the guy. I would vote for LeBron James for mayor of Akron as much as I like LeBron James.
What I would say to the caller is I think Trump is exactly what we need right now. I think Washington has really gotten fat and happy and have forgotten about the people who have voted for them. Trump was pushing a lot of ideas that used to be things that Democrats claimed to agree with. They used to care about or pretend to care about the working class, the manufacturing base. They used to be, not for Wall Street. Trump turned that upside down. He took no money from Wall Street. I don't know if you saw the figures on that. It was overwhelming. It was like 90% of the money was for Hillary, and the other 10% wasn't for Trump. It was for some third-party candidate, which is why, yes, again, some of us who supported Trump, the candidate, were a little disappointed when he got into the White House and turned the keys of the kingdom over to Goldman Sachs. But, okay, that's why I say, I mean, my book is for you because maybe we're not going to get the things he ran on. The most important ones, trade, immigration, no more wars. Instead, he turns and starts pushing Mitch McConnell's agenda. I mean, cutting the regulations, that's important. That's great. That got the economy going. I think tax cuts were more a second-term kind of thing. We really wanted the wall first. But to bust up the system, to expose the media for what it is, if that's all we get out of this guy, yeah, I'd vote for LeBron. I'd vote for Al Sharpton, just to bust up the system because I think it's gotten so corrupt. Another great thing Trump has done, exposing the swamp. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. It was a concept none of us had before. Exposing the media, exposing the swamp, as disappointed as I am, and there's still time. There's still time, Mr. President. You can still build the wall and come through on those immigration promises. Wait, there was one other thing. Oh, I know. In my acknowledgments, you mentioned why can't they be named. I thought it would be worth mentioning that one of my very brave friends, I mean, among the jobs, obviously Hollywood. They can't claim to know me, anyone in that town. But also people who might, I'm a lawyer, so a lot of people of my friends are lawyers. They might come up for judgeships. So usually I will check with my friends in advance back for, I don't know, slander, treason. One of my friends is Miguel Estrada. And obviously he was going to be, like a rocket to the Supreme Court. He is brilliant, fabulous, really, really brilliant, and the best lawyer I know. Anyway, I emailed him, just out of politeness, to thank him and say, yeah, you probably can't be thanked, but I'd really love to thank you. I said, when I have time, I send my friends chapters or little segments, not very much. And he said to me, brave man that he is, my friends come first. Of course you can thank me. I thanked him, and when he was nominated to the D.C. Circuit, Chuck Schumer went to the Senate floor and denounced him for being thanked in one of my books.
About 15 minutes left with Ann Coulter and lots of calls. Terry in North Carolina, Republican. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Ms. Coulter. Glad to see somebody on here that kind of thinks like I do. I mean, during the last election, my biggest thing was, Hillary Clinton could have looked into the mirror and the reflection would have been Jeb Bush.
Yes.
I am so sick of Washington. I've tried for years to get C-SPAN to actually run and tell us where our money goes. I think our taxpayer money should be broke down into quarters, and we should know to exact penny how they spend our money, the way the IRS wants to know how we spend our money.
I just want their salaries. One of the great things that's coming out of this this Russia nonsense is to see how much people like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and, this and that person is being paid. I mean, normally the deal with a government job is it's fun. It's not that much work. You work self-paced. You absolutely can't be fired. You get unbelievably great health care and a pension. Who gets pensions anymore? The trade-off is your salary isn't that high. You have a higher salary in the private sector, but man, you can be fired on a dime. Your health care you have to pay for. Your pension you have to pay for. Now it's the reverse. Government workers get all that, plus they make more than people in the private sector. How about just start with an across-the-board cut of federal salaries?
Spring Hill, Florida. Jeff, Democrat, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I'd like to point out two bits of hypocrisy by Ann Coulter. If you can, would you please put up the statement that Trump made today about Manafort, because I'd like for her to explain to me what he means when he says Manafort didn't break. Break what? Didn't break by telling the truth? Didn't break by...
No, by making stuff up, obviously.
Oh, well, if you've got making stuff up, that is easily proven. okay? You can do that. That's what a court of law is for. And you talk about this Russian nonsense. Whether or not Trump himself went to meet and do some kind of collusive thing is irrelevant. What is relevant is that he has not only put other people in charge of that, like his son, but also he has surrounded himself with the best people, crooks. Guy like Manafort, 5 Republican presidents, and he's been doing this for years.
Never got the hypocrisy on that call, by the way. Though I got another very angry caller. Now, well, let's see. The question was Manafort.
Originally on the breaking, the president saying that I feel badly for Paul Manafort and his wonderful family. They applied tremendous pressure on him, and unlike Michael Cohen, he refused to, in parentheses, break, in quotes, break.
Right. Well, can it be proved? I mean, I think what Michael Cohen said is almost by definition what he was required to say, because he is like Elliot in True Romance, whatever you want me to say, on campaign finance, the punishment of which will be a fine. Oh, and by the way, darling Obama paid nearly $500,000 in fines on campaign finance violations. So stop pretending like this is the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
And to keep us updated on that, the president's latest tweet from about 9 minutes ago.
Excellent.
Michael Cohen pled guilty to 2 counts of campaign finance violations. That is not a crime. President Obama had a big campaign finance violation, and it was easily settled, the president tweeted.
Right. Again, the laws are a little bit Byzantine. But the most important point about the campaign finance violations is proving the intent to affect the campaign. Now, normally, they're not, rooting around digging for some sort of crime on people who haven't done anything. So it's quite obvious. I mean, for example, with many cases like this, but it was in the news, the Dinesh D'Souza case, where you pay people the maximum amount, you reimburse them to donate to a campaign. That's quite obvious. You're not just randomly writing checks to people for $2,010. Here, would Trump, would he have paid to keep an affair quiet, to keep it from his wife, to keep it from Ivanka, to keep it from people who go to his clubs and resorts? The prosecutor would have to prove, and it was a little more obvious in the John Edwards case, because I don't think those donors are paying for Riel Hunter now. That was his mistress. Wow, were they supporting her, flying around the country, paying for she was living large with a bunch of Democratic, very wealthy people, a millionaire, 100 millionaires. Are they still paying for a mistress? Why would they be? That's actually kind of clearly connected to a campaign. The prosecution was laughed at, and he was acquitted. You have to prove that the only reason Trump did this. Oh, and one other thing about campaign finance violations. In this case, ignorance of the law is a defense.
To North Charleston, Steve's waiting, an independent. Good morning.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Ann. And I tuned in late, so if my comments have been covered, I apologize. You're right. The media does need overhauling. It's a shame that it's abused. And sometimes, actually, media bias works in the favor of the candidate that particular outlet opposes, and that troops will rally around the person. But, Thomas Jefferson had a lot to say about a free press. Now, there's a difference. In Thomas Jefferson's day, media coverage wasn't instantaneous, and he also had a lot to say about editing. Well, there's no editing today. Well, there may be in newspapers. That's the press. But the media, everything's instant. Radio, TV, social media, commentary is out there without editing, and that's a big problem, and that's a reason we need overhaul. But anyway, I'd like to say something about campaign contributions. I'm an independent, and I think that needs overhauling too. It just takes way too much money to mount a successful campaign, and that's why you only see the media money-controlled candidates on TV on the national stage during debates, which would be Republicans and Democrats. Now, Bernie mounted a good campaign this last cycle in 2016. I'm not a Bernie independent. I consider myself a member of the Constitution Party. Darrell Castle, he just couldn't get money. Thanks to C-SPAN, we get to see those people, but they never get on the national stage. So we need the Republican and Democrat nominees need vast amounts of money. So the taste of victory is so sweet that the supporters of the candidates will yield to temptation to take excessive contributions.
Steve, got your point.
Okay, although I'm pushing Resistance is Futile, which came out yesterday and is a fun book. Steve, you really have to read In Trump We Trust, because most people do believe this. I didn't know that regular people believed it. I knew these idiots on Capitol Hill believed it, but you are absolutely, and I think you'll be happy to hear this, absolutely, completely, 100% wrong. That money buys elections. Unfortunately, the campaign consultants and the media have persuaded the politicians that they do need money. Again, Donald Trump spent less money than probably anyone since the LBJ era, maybe going back to, who knows, to win the White House. I always knew if a politician came along and just pushed popular ideas, that would work. No one watches campaign ads anymore. I mean, it funds the media. It funds these rich campaign consultants who are off buying islands. They're totally loaded. Why do they keep running? I won't go into too much of this, but let me just cite one example of these shyster campaign consultants. In my home state of Connecticut, why do we have basically a semi-retarded senator right now? We had a fantastic guy who could have run, Rob Simmons, sort of perfect for Connecticut. He went to Yale, he was in the Navy. But no, campaign consultants, and I don't blame her, but they run the wrestling lady twice. Why? Because she's really, really rich, so they can rip her off for money. They line their pockets. Their kids' college tuition is paid for. And again, I don't blame the candidates. They have consultants coming to them saying, oh, yeah, you can win this race. Just give me the money. They just did it to Foster Freeze in Wyoming. Money doesn't win races. And the sooner politicians figure out they are being lied to by campaign consultants and the donors are being lied to by campaign consultants, it's popular ideas that win. And if Trump didn't prove that, I don't know what more evidence you're ever going to ask for. You cite Sanders? Sanders spent more money than Trump. It's popular ideas.
I wonder how you feel about Linda McMahon as head of the Small Business Administration.
She's probably fine at that. My point is, look, I'm from New Canaan. They were never going to, we're not Minnesota. They were never going to go for the wrestling lady. They just weren't. And look, once they picked her, I was fine with her. But Rob Simmons was perfect for Connecticut. He overturned a Democrat in an upstate district. Well, I won't go into him, but he was perfect. They would have voted for him in Greenwich and New Canaan and every place else. He could have won. He had everything except money. And the campaign consultants say, forget him. This is and why did they run her a second time? Because they found out she had another bank account? It's outrageous how many seats Republicans have lost because they listen to these shyster campaign consultants. And I would love to know the names of the campaign consultants who persuaded Foster Freeze to run, Linda McMahon to run, John Racy in West Virginia. Look, he's a wonderful, wonderful man. They were not going to vote for a man in West Virginia who lives in Palm Beach. They weren't going to do it. But the campaign consultants, oh, you can win. Just write us another check.
About 5 minutes left. We'll try to get to as many calls as we can. Mike, Highland, New York, Republican. Go ahead.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well. You're on with Ann Coulter.
Yeah, I just want to say C-SPAN rocks, and I just have a quick comment. If the great Sarah Sanders ever decides to leave her job, my choice to replace her is the equally great Ann Coulter. Thank you.
Oh, I hope she never leaves her job.
Would you take that job?
I wanted to do it without pay.
For Donald Trump?
Hope wanted me to do it. And I said the only way I'd do it is if I could do it for 1 month, not officially, just to show how it's done. Boy, I didn't need to. I love that Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
What did you think needs to be done different?
More like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but I mean, I think what's happened, and I'm very sorry for those of you who have jobs and can't tune in every afternoon to watch these White House press conferences. They're fantastic. It's become a game for the press. Who can be more shocking and rude and bring up the, who's going to be featured on the evening program? It has nothing to do with getting news. And so they deserve to have Sarah Huckabee Sanders be rude back to them, and she is. I'd almost have 2 separate briefings where, you'd have the policy person. For those of you who actually care about policy, we'll be answering questions in this room. For the showboating members of the press, that will be Sarah Huckabee Sanders because it is fun TV.
Jerry, Cottondale, Alabama, independent. Good morning.
Good morning. I hear about the fake news, all the fake news, and there's a simple solution to the fake news. That's a reinstatement of the fairness doctrine. You know, if the fairness doctrine was reinstated, the first two to go would be MSNBC and Fox News. They would be out of business automatic because they're nothing but pure propaganda. Reinstate the fairness doctrine, and you can forget about your fake news.
Well, that unfortunately a lot of these rules and laws sound great, but someone has to administer the fairness doctrine. That ends up being the government. It didn't really quite work out as planned. I do think we are facing a crisis in free speech right now. I mean, the left has control of the mainstream media, Hollywood, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, the schools, K through 12, the universities. The one place you can actually go to get the facts are these tiny little corners of the internet. And what are they doing? All the social media companies, no, we've got to. And I must say, if I were advising the resistance, I'd say you guys have got to shut down little, Gamergate boys on Twitter, because that is a huge threat to this entire enterprise.
How do you feel about Fox News, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, the Washington Times editorial board?
I don't really consume them. I'm more of an MSNBC gal because I'm a hate watcher. But if I could just conclude what needs to be done, when I was just at the crescendo, we need to apply the First Amendment to these social media companies like Twitter, Facebook, Google, because it is a public square. And there is precedent for that, and it's got to be done, because this is really terrifying. And people talk about chilling speech. When they're just throwing people off right and left. I mean, I wrote in Treason about Joe McCarthy. I know quite a bit about that era. The slanders of McCarthy were indeed slanders and false, but everything that liberals fantasized Joe McCarthy was doing is being done now. We're throwing you off Twitter because or out of the White House, because you once went to a meeting with someone who said something online, and he also published someone on the same webpage, which we find offensive. I mean, it is such a guilt by association. I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime.
Let's see if we can get in Omar in North Carolina, a Democrat. Good morning. Omar, are you with us this morning?
Yes, how you doing this morning? I would like to make comments for Ms. Coulter. She said drain the swamp. At least 10 people in Trump administration already been kicked out of office for violating taxpayer money. Scott Pruitt, Ryan Zinke, my man Tom Price. There's so many people. She say drain the swamp. He exposing the swamp. He brought the swamp to the White House, and then she say build a wall. What we need? If we need to build a wall, it need to be for all these white people out here shooting up schools, shooting up concerts, killing all these people, but they'll bring one Mexican, one illegal immigrant, and put that on TV, running on Fox News all day. What about all these white people killing people for nothing? The man just killed his wife and 2 children and his unborn baby.
Omar, got your point. And Coulter.
Well, as long as Omar wants to build a wall to keep out all the white people, I'm thinking he should apply for a job with the New York Times. That's my advice to you, Omar. They pay very well.
What about his thoughts on the swamp?
I mean, obviously, Omar doesn't follow me on Twitter. I've been quite critical of Trump for many of his swamp hires. I'm more upset about the Goldman Sachs people than. But yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with that. I think if I had been Trump, I would have hired smart people who know something about politics and supported my agenda. But he chose not to. So you're going to have some problems.
The book, Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. The author, of course, Ann Coulter. Always appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it for the Washington Journal today, but we'll be back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Eastern, 4 a.m. Pacific. In the meantime, have a great Wednesday.